Okay, Claire, do you want to kick off?
No problem. Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Claire McKavanagh, and I am the product manager here at Wellington IT. Welcome to the cuEngage event on how to develop your digital strategy, which will be led by Paul Rooney from Constituent and Geoff McKay from Central Liverpool Credit Union. We will be doing a Q&A at the end, so feel free to pop your questions into the chat bar and we will answer these later on. So now I'll pass it over to you, Paul Rooney, to kick off the session. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Claire, for that introduction. I'm delighted to be here this morning. Thank you to Wellington and cuEngage. I will hopefully, over the next 30 minutes or so, give you an overview and hopefully a simplification of the type of considerations when you're developing your digital strategy. And then I'll pass over to Geoff, who hopefully will bring that to life for you in terms of his experience at Central Liverpool Credit Union. So if I just start with, sorry, just my slides are failing me. There we are. So the first question I would pose this morning to you is what happened to Nokia? And I think that's a good starting point in any of the consideration if you're my age. So if you're in your 40s, everyone remembers these devices as they became part of our life. But I suppose the question I'm posing this morning from the outset is whatever happened to that famous device that we all had as part of our lives. So these are the key points that I'm going to be focusing in on. I understand similar events have taken place in terms of Irish credit unions. So this is going to be focused around UK credit unions, and it's going to be centred around those who are starting that journey, and perhaps those who are some way down the line, but perhaps are looking just to refresh some of the considerations. So I'm going to be covering why it's important that all of us look to digital, and then start to explore some of the key elements of what we actually mean by a digital strategy. I'll hopefully simplify what is commonly referred to as the digital methodology, and then give you some pointers in terms of considerations as you make progress along your own digital roadmap, and conclude with some key messages. So firstly, just a brief introduction to Constituent. Constituent was founded back in 2018 as an ethical consultancy. And what we generally do is we work with social enterprises or small or medium businesses as they start their digital journey and provide support along the way. I think the key emphasis I would just raise in terms of this slide is that it covers different aspects of the company beyond digital itself. So we do focus and provide support in terms of governance strategy, and importantly, understanding the market in which you're serving into. So we have a roadmap and a journey toolkit that we use, which starts really with a diagnostic. So if you were just starting out in terms of thinking about the digital strategy, some of the key elements of your organisation, and right through to actually doing annual audits, advisory audits in terms of how you're progressing on your own digital journey. And importantly, I just want to emphasise is that it covers 8 key components in our maturity model, one of which is digital technology, but as you'll see from the list, hopefully there's a whole range of organisational considerations. So firstly, why digital? Well, I really like this quotation, and I think it's really important in emphasising that this isn't something that's happening in the future, it's something that's here and now. And it really makes the point that if you fail to respond to the digital age in which we're all part of, then you get left behind. And that applies to us in our everyday lives, but also applies in our businesses and our working lives, and also as nations. Some nations across the world have really focused in on providing a digital future, and they're reaping the benefits, whereas others sometimes are somewhat behind and feel as if in some way they can choose the pace of change. And that's what today is all about. It's actually realizing what is actually driving your considerations. So I'm reflective at the moment, so I thought I'd go back 20 years, and this is some of the imagery that I would certainly think of when I go back that far, and you actually see some elements of everyday life that perhaps have changed dramatically as we fast forward to now. And you see that these are the companies which we are all very familiar with and dominated by. If you're watching football at the moment, these are some of the key sponsors. But I think what's really interesting is when you look at Airbnb and Uber, Airbnb don't have any hotel rooms or accommodation, and Uber don't have any taxis. So actually what you see has been driven by these technology companies is the service actually, rather than being the provider of a specific service. And this is what it's all centered around. The common question you were asking people 5 years ago is, do you have a smartphone? And near enough everyone has a smartphone now, and everything's centered around it. And the key point that I just emphasised is that the data in which they're all compiling is absolutely key. So that goes back to Nokia, and like all companies that have went on a journey, and sometimes it's to the end. If you think about the retail sector, particularly around COVID, you'll see that what got you here will not necessarily get you where you need to be. And I think that's a really important message for credit unions to understand, is that we're in the UK 25, 30 years down the line of some of our most successful credit unions. And it's a really difficult message to digest and respond to, is that what's actually got them to that success point will not necessarily be what will lead to success in the future. And that's the purpose of this presentation this morning. So I just want to flag this. This is a slide that I use that brings in the external and internal factors that are pressing for a credit union. And you see there in the bottom right-hand corner, the technological advancements. That's leading then to market expectations. So going back to my Nokia phone, Nokia didn't keep up with the times and the expectations of their customers and the market, which then led to them lacking a competitive advantage. And in the left-hand side, a lot of people look at technology because they have to drive efficiencies. Now, that's not always the case for credit unions, but it is part of the consideration, because efficiency should hopefully also improve in terms of effectiveness of service that your members are looking for. But I think the starting point probably for most credit unions is meeting some of the complexities that you find both internally in terms of your staffing team and being able to provide that back office service right through to what your customers or members are actually expecting from you. And that's really the case for change. And you'll see that that's not necessarily in the control of the credit union or even the sector. That's in the control of your members and those who you're hoping to join and become members. And I thought this was just a good illustration of what I see as the digital journey of credit unions and across financial services. When I go back those 20 years, we were very much counter-based. We did attend a particular branch and provide our services over the counter, and we felt confident about that as members and as customers if you were elsewhere. But we did gravitate over those 20 years towards telephone services, and we, as we did that and we had a preference and we had a confidence in that, then more and more credit unions provided that type of service and continue to do that as they continue to have branches. But also what you're finding increasingly is that they're recognising, probably from the feedback they're receiving from members, that the expectation is there is a digital provision of services as well. And that's where technology and apps are certainly becoming prevalent in the sector. So I'm going to pepper the presentation with a few of the findings from the excellent cuEngage survey. So this one, I think, is a really stark point to illustrate everything I've said so far, and that is that 45% of people believe that the service of a credit union will be completely digital in 10 years, and that would be the end of physical branches. Now, that's quite a stark, and as a question I'm commonly asked is, will there be physical branches? But as I'll explain in a few moments, that will really depend on your credit union and your membership base. But you'll see the direction of travel that most people believe that financial services are moving in. And this is a really important statistic as well. In the survey, 29% of people stated that they left their credit union because of the lack of digital services. So I would imagine a lot of credit unions at the moment are considering the digital strategy or progressing the digital strategy because of that type of feedback, that demand. But there you're seeing that members are deciding to leave credit unions if they don't provide those types of services. So let's turn to what we actually mean by a digital strategy. So this is a diagram that I've taken from BCG, and their illustration here I feel is somewhat complex, but they're giving you 5 key rules that they would suggest in terms of compiling a digital strategy. Now, hopefully I'm going to simplify that. But the key point I want to start off with is your digital strategy is a key component of your business strategy. And I've said, hopefully not flippantly, that if you don't have one, because many organisations believe they have a strategy, but sometimes they haven't actually dedicated the time it takes. Now, if you don't have a business strategy with clear objectives, then it's very difficult to see where technology will form part of delivery of that strategy. So your starting point is definitely a business strategy. As we'll go on to discuss, we'll see where the digital strategy fits into that. But starting with what we actually mean by strategy, and this quotation is just there to set the scene. It is very much about the changing environment. So that point about Nokia or 20 years ago in the credit union sector in the UK and now, is that the environment has changed. The expectations of members have changed. And actually, because of the exposure of technology, you'll find that the change in expectations will be actually ever increasing. So where you might have recognised as leaders that there would be a 5-10 year cycle, you might actually find that's 3 to 5 years now. And it's always very important then to try and keep as far ahead as possible in terms of meeting those expectations. If you don't, then of course that's where the other quotation around becoming redundant comes in. And again, that's a really stark statement, but one that I'm sure you're very familiar with. So what do we actually mean by digital transformation? Well, again, here's a quotation from Gartner in terms of all the different aspects of what that could mean. But some of that terminology I personally find confusing. I'm not sure if it's deliberately confusing, but it certainly feels as if it's something that's beyond what business leaders would be expecting inside credit unions. It's not. And actually, I think what we have to do together or collectively is to try and streamline and simplify the language around some of this. So I recognise, these as being common themes in terms of the work that we do alongside credit unions. And a lot of it starts with perhaps starting to use mobile devices and that rollout, predominantly in terms of the staffing team. So that ability then to shift from being fixed to one location, so a branch or a telephone contact centre, to actually being able then to perhaps go into pop-up areas inside the community or actually be mobile. So that's the type of activity I'm sure everyone's familiar with. And likewise, I think commonly when everyone talks about digital, and I've mentioned it as well, is we always think about app-based services or online services. So many credit unions in the UK have that online presence. I think some of the considerations I would just say to think about here is how's the usage of that online portal that you have, especially if you now have a mobile app. Are people now not using the online portal and they're using their devices? Well, as we commonly know, most people who have access to a smartphone device will access websites from their phone and would prefer to use an app. So it's that journey again that you may have made that investment in an online portal and you may need that to serve a particular customer group or member group, but the fact is that preference will shift if you actually have a mobile app. Some of the others are more, I suppose, the more technical parts, but everyone, I'm sure, certainly if they use Microsoft Office 365, will understand that journey to the cloud at the very basic level, but also how you're storing your data. Traditionally, it would be your own servers. Are you moving then to a cloud-based environment? Automation is a key part for credit unions. That support for your decision making, but importantly, I find that in credit unions, they understand completely that this is not about taking the decision away from the credit union or the team at the credit unions, but it's how they support the decision making. So importantly, automation never means the answer is no, but it might inform where you perhaps need more of that personal intervention, which is the reason why we are members of credit unions as opposed to other financial institutions. And of course, critically, data, as I mentioned before, but how that's now shifted towards how you use your data that you have in your members to perhaps provide that more tailored service that they're looking for. So marketing and promotion is absolutely key when we talk about the digital journey, and we'll come back to that. So key message: technology is the enabler of your digital strategy. It's not the other way about. And looking at that complex diagram I mentioned earlier on, I would perhaps just simplify it for the purposes of our discussion into 5 key stages. So again, having that vision and objectives, having a key business strategy you're looking to deliver. And the next stage is obviously that research. You need to engage with your members. You need to engage with your communities, especially if you're trying to target new members or grow your membership. It will take a form of business analysis. You will have to look at your own processes internally and actually make sure that it's fit for purpose. And I'll expand upon that in a moment. And importantly, if you're actually looking to deploy or invest in new technology, then it's about documenting your actual requirements. So what's your business requirements? Importantly, that's about you determining those and not allowing, for example, a supplier determine that for you. And finally, you do have decisions to be made in terms of what type of technology you look for. Do you build it yourself, or do you look for solutions that are in the marketplace? So I'm not going to focus too much on the key questions, but you'll see there are at least several overarching considerations that you have to make. There's one key thing that I want to just flag up here in the bottom left about risk profile. You'll find that when people talk about digital strategy, sometimes they talk about being really ambitious and going forward as far as you can. I think that's fine, but I would also have a caveat around making sure that you're actually building a strategy or compiling a strategy which is fit for purpose for you and your organisation. You have to obviously inform that with your members. There's no point in introducing technology for the sake of it. You have to work with your members to make sure that you're providing the service that they want and what they want moving forward. So that's a caveat that I would certainly make when you're perhaps doing some research on this. So the methodology will help you establish what you should be looking for in terms of your digital strategy. And put simply, that's usually summed up as people, processes, and technology. That is what you're looking to. And the bit I would emphasize is you work from the people very much as the first step. You look at your business processes, and that should unlock what you're looking for in terms of your technology. Probably mistakes have been made in the past where people have been driven to the technology, where they sit through perhaps presentations and believe that would really make a difference to our business life, without actually looking and saying, is it what your members are looking for? Is it going to actually make the lives of your staff better, or perhaps allow them to maybe undertake more member driven activities, or is it actually going to complicate your processes, as I'll explain just in a moment? So firstly, the research part is around your people. Turning back to the cuEngage survey, 33% of people who responded would prefer a completely digital banking experience. So that would be in terms of the financial service. That's 1 in 3. So again, that reaffirms the point that people are shifting as the technology is developing. But 47% are actually saying that they prefer a combination of both. So that only leaves the 1 in 5, the 20% who responded saying that they would want completely in-branch services. Now, I don't believe anyone who's viewing this presentation would actually say that they are moving towards or maintaining completely in-branch services, but I think it makes the case that, you know, the vast majority of your members and perhaps your future members are going to be expecting at least a combination of both, and it would actually set the scene that there's a direction of travel towards digital. But I suppose the next generation are the ones that we commonly talk about, and their exposure from technology from day one. Unlike me, who the Nokia phone was the very first piece of technology I owned, young people have been brought up in an environment where they have smartphone devices. And yeah, a third of 16, 24-year-olds are obviously making the clear statement that they would expect to digitally onboard as opposed to have to complete forms, paper forms, or visit a branch. I'm actually surprised it's not higher, if I'm being entirely honest about that feedback, but again, still a significant number. And here is an illustration again from the survey that makes the point that it's not just about the next generation, it's everyone. So if you move to the right of the graph, you see that 55 plus, 1 in 5 are saying that the importance of mobile app. Again, the great thing about this survey is you can go back and revisit it next year or in a few years' time, and you'll probably find that those numbers will increase. But I'd be interested in your thoughts if you disagree. But I think that illustrates there is a direction of travel, and it's not just particular age groups. And 21%, obviously looking at the growth of opportunity in the credit union sector, are making the point that if they offered online banking and a mobile app, they would consider a credit union as a primary financial institution. And again, all of us, I'm sure, on this call would see that as a real welcome sign that there is that recognition of what a credit union means and what the potential is in terms of wider services. So, and just finally, 1 in 3 again who prefer to take out a loan digitally. Again, I think that's probably about right, but I would actually say that will probably increase, and certainly would be higher in different age groups. So here's the part that I think sometimes gets forgotten about in terms of digital transformation, and that is around the business processes. This is an illustration I thought would be helpful, is that when you talk about business processes, commonly this is how people view them. So this is about digital onboarding, from the starting point of the core platform, probably right through to the welcome pack that gets issued, and that's nice and clean. I've put this on the screen because that's the reality of a credit union's onboarding process. Now, that was some 50 stages in that process. It's not a Wellington credit union, but at the same time, it's making the point that what seems really straightforward, when you actually break down to each of the stages, each of the steps, you'll find that it's multiple and far more than you realise. And again, just to illustrate, and this is clearly not for reading, but this is the onboarding process from start to finish. And many of steps that you see here sit inside and outside systems. So again, sometimes what we do is we introduce technology, but actually it's causing your process to be more convoluted rather than making them more straightforward. And that's a point that I'll come back to when we look at the technology. So when we document requirements, what do we really mean by that? Well, firstly, let's look at the technology landscape. The blue areas is the core services that you would find if you're a Wellington customer or a customer elsewhere. Is that those types of services what we would tend to expect from that core platform. But the key point that you would make is there needs to be interfaces. So your online channels are part of the member channels. You've got interfaces. We're obviously in an increasingly complex regulatory environment. So you're obviously having to think about what your regulators are expecting in terms of uploads and the like. So your core platform has to provide that. And you have supporting systems. I mentioned Office 365, which many credit unions rely upon now, document management systems. The key point I would say in this illustration is to say that you're going to have to create or ensure those interfaces are fit for purpose moving forward. This session is not about the technology landscape, but obviously that's part of the considerations that many credit unions are starting to undertake. And the key thing there is where you introduce perhaps third-party systems and look for efficiencies, they have to be able to integrate into your core platform. If they don't, then what you'll probably find is that diagram I showed you around the complexities of the business processes will actually be the reality. So what you think might actually be a straightforward improvement to your front-facing customer or member journey actually might lead to a lot more manual processes in your back office. And that sometimes doesn't get forgotten about until the technology is introduced. So think about it in advance. That's the key point around looking at your business processes. And this is the type of gap analysis feedback that you sometimes find. Again, we've not got time this morning to go through these, but hopefully some of this actually makes sense to your own organisations. But the key thing there is that you should be looking for those efficiencies, both in terms of your back office and your front end. But the key thing is that your member is always the most important consideration, is what are they looking for. And again, some of the things you might find is there is actually a change in the branch activities that's really been brought to the surface in the last 18 months with COVID restrictions. But is that going to change as we move towards finally leaving lockdown and the end of restrictions? Will people return to the branch, or will they continue with the digital services that you've provided? So that's the type of consideration you should have. But again, I've emphasised the role of the members, but the role of your credit union team is really important here, that you actually get their input in terms of what they are looking for in terms of a system, and not just actually, unfortunately, introduce superficial technology, which actually might lead to more time being taken than actually alleviating the pain points that you thought it would. And this is my, I suppose, 5 key business requirements that are present now that perhaps would not have been present if we had this conversation 5 years ago. And again, if I look at, I mentioned before data, management reporting is absolutely key. And what I'm increasingly finding is that that's a number one driver for looking to technology. What type of reports do a CEO or general manager or boards look for in terms of the system? Now, many traditional systems were never set up to provide that. So it's a question of, do they provide it now? But at the same time, the need is there. So the requirement is there for that management information. And of course, the data also fits into your marketing strategy. How do you actually encourage people to join the credit union? How do you serve the members with the services that they want? If you're able then to take the data and actually then identify segments of that membership that perhaps would be looking to borrow a loan for a particular purpose because you have that information, you're more likely then to actually start leading to that engagement. So the key thing here is getting access to that data, being able to use it, and also then to provide that better service for members and credit unions. And I know there's been, as part of cuEngage, presentations on that. That's what transforms the role of the credit union in people's lives. And of course, I won't touch on any of the other points, but of course, it usually is, we look to our credit unions to borrow. So actually being able to actually get fast decisions and fast payments is absolutely key. Why is it key? Because elsewhere in the financial services market, that's what is being provided. And if credit unions can't keep up with that pace, then they'll see, unfortunately, as being a secondary service as opposed to a primary service. And that's obviously the drive that we all have in terms of supporting the sector. So as we conclude, we'll start looking at the digital roadmap. So we're right through to looking at identifying solutions, and that key question is build or buy. Well, the simple answer that I would give is you would always look to buy unless there is a specific purpose for bespoke. I know it's always encouraged that perhaps what you look for is distinct, but reality is if you've got clear business requirements, you're assessing that against what's available there in the marketplace. So it's looking at available technology. And again, that goes back to the key decisions that I made reference to before. That kind of risk taking, I would say you would look to mitigate by looking and saying, can whatever has been presented to me actually meet what are my clear business requirements? If it can, then you would also look to buy. And I'm going to emphasize here that around the implementation, it is around the project management of that. Commonly, what you find is that people get excited around the new technology and they tend to pass it over to the supplier to manage for you. And that's where mistakes are made. There are obviously well-known, well-documented mistakes in the UK market where that's happened. It's crucially important as a credit union that you project manage any new technology and projects around that. And that's some of what Constituent does. But the point being is that if you don't have that support, you need to get that support. It has to be independent of your vendor. And also as part of that is obviously making sure that what you're introducing is fully tested. But just to touch finally on the introduction of the technology, because I thought there was a couple of things that came out of the survey again that were really interesting. And that is where the technology has been introduced, do the members know? So this is about awareness of the digital services of credit unions. And I know it might be a snap survey, but look at that. The vast majority of members responded, advised that they didn't know that they were able to do online services. They didn't know that the credit union had a mobile app. They didn't know they could join online. So when you introduce it, you need to work extremely hard to make sure the members are aware that you have these services. I remember recently being involved in the Irish credit union sector and actually finding out that was a real problem there as well. So it's not just in the UK, it's across the board. Is that even when you've got the technology, you need to make sure that your members are aware of it and hopefully are introduced to it. And again, the point I would make is that sometimes we get kind of caught up on believing that our part of the world is distinct from any other. Well, I think this survey has brought that out as well. We are seeing across using that example, the mobile app at very low figures of awareness in terms of the service of a credit union. So that's where your marketing strategy very much kicks in. I know many credit unions are doing that in terms of their social media activity, but I think it's really important to make sure that you don't just introduce the technology, you actually make sure that members know about it. And I'm just going to conclude by as I mentioned, this is about business change. It's not just purely around technology. Technology is the component, it brings its own complexities. But again, we are well aware of these figures that most change projects are not successfully implemented. And the reasons are actually known quite clearly because change is actually all about people. And if we don't take people on the journey with us, then unfortunately it doesn't matter what you do in terms of technology. So again, a familiar story would be that you introduce technology, it's not used. Why isn't it not used? Because staff resist it, or they don't like the prospect of change. They are not comfortable with how it might change their role or responsibility. So you need to take them on that journey, because otherwise what you'll do is you'll invest in technology, you won't get the benefits of it, or you might actually find, going back to those processes, that the same bad business processes get re-engineered into the system, which means you don't gain any of that efficiencies, which means that you will not be able then to get the benefit of more time to spend with your members, which is, I am sure, the driving consideration that you have. I put up here some of probably the reasons for resistance of change, and I've probably said them all. So if anyone says I'm quite comfortable with change, we've all got an expectation, and we need to be brought onto that journey. So my key takeaways for this morning is that before you undertake any consideration of business strategy, make sure you have a clear business strategy. What is it you're trying to achieve as a credit union? Now, I think you've got a phenomenal peer group in terms of being able to actually, exchange views across the sector. But of course, you need to consider that in terms of your own common bond area and what's important in terms of your communities that you serve. So, but it has to be a clear way forward with a timeline. And of course, the technology could be the enabler and is likely to be a key part of that business strategy. But I'm making that emphasis again that the people are absolutely key in terms of that journey. As I mentioned just there, it's a business change. So don't just look at it as being the introduction of technology and leaving it. Look at it as a change project where you have to bring people on the journey, hopefully having sponsors inside your organisation. Try look to have member focus groups where you can actually get their early feedback on what you're proposing and hopefully take them on the journey as well. But actually look at all of the areas that we talked about when we said people, process and technology. And of course, talking about that analogy, as a bus, it's very important that you try and keep everyone on the bus. But the important thing is that you cannot afford people to hold you back. You have to try and take them on the journey. But if you want to serve your members with what they're looking for, then you're going to have to keep moving forward as organisations. And again, that is looking 3 to 5 years into the future of what they'll be looking for in terms of your credit union. And finally, I'd say be patient. It's challenging, it's difficult, and also if you can, although I've said, it's the bus and keep it moving, you try and be flexible, try and be realistic in terms of your expectations, and of course be focused. Just actually make sure that you keep that organisational consideration around what you're trying to achieve, and that is obviously to provide the ethical services to your members. So with that, I'll say thank you. My details are on the screen if anyone wants to note them down, but they will be made available later. And with that, I'll pass you to Geoff.
Thanks for that, Paul. That was really, really insightful and a lot of great tips in there. And just anyone, please do take the opportunity to ask Paul any questions you may have by popping them in the chat bar, and we'll cover these at the end. I'm going to pass over to Geoff now, and I'm going to share his screens. So Geoff, if you could unmute and I'll share these screens for you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Paul. That was really interesting. Just watching that presentation from Paul there made me realise how closely this digital strategy we followed actually was to Paul's recommendation. So just it reaffirms that at least we've done the right thing. So thanks to Paul for confirming that. When we started looking at our strategy, our business strategy, a couple of years ago, we didn't have a digital strategy as such. We wanted to, we were looking at where we were. We've been growing organically ever since we started. We had 3 branches, 10,000 members, 1,500 junior members, and roughly £6 million in both savings and loans. So things were going well. So we could be forgiven for just leaving things the way they were. The problem we had was that we kept on having to turn away people because they didn't live in our common bond, didn't live or work in our common bond. And these were people we could have helped. So we didn't want to turn anyone away. So we looked at ways of being able to accommodate everyone. And in the end, we decided that the only way to do that was to expand our common bond, not just for the area of Liverpool that we had or growing across the whole city. We decided to go for the whole of our city region, which includes 6 local authorities. And it covers somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million people. So it's a massive common bond. But then we had a different problem. Most of our members lived or worked around where our branches were. So they're all local people. So straight away you think, well, if we're going to expand across the entire common bond, then we'd have to have branches in all sorts of different places, and the cost implications of that were just far too great to consider. So the only way we could do what we wanted to do was to go online, to go digital. So almost by accident, we came up with a digital strategy. Luckily, we had. I knew someone who's a bit like Paul, does a similar job to Paul, and I'd recommend working with someone like Paul as much as possible, because they understand both the business and the digital requirements and the different software that's available to you. So working with our consultant, we were able to outline exactly where we were and what we did, and this slide just shows the complexity of what we all do as credit union staff. We don't realise we do all this when we're doing it, but this is on paper how we do everything and what we do. So you can see we've got marketing and member communications. To us, that's answering the phone or opening the door, or answering an email or reading a letter. But if you want to design a digital strategy, you need to understand every single communication or contact you have with a member or with a potential member. And then when you think you want to onboard, Paul mentioned onboarding new members, we had to think of that, and all the different things you've got to do. Lending, all the different aspects of lending, the initial decision, the review of the decision, the review of the maybe bank statements, having to get bank statements off the members, all the supporting documents that you need, and so on. All this had to be recognised and thought about before it could be digitalised. And obviously we've then got, as well as lending, we need credit control, because the two go hand in hand. We need to look at our accounting. How does that fit in? What do we do? Do we use online accounting? Do we use accounting packages? Does that link in with the strategy that we've got? Does it link in with the software that we've got? How does it all affect compliance? Is it secure? Is the data secure? Is it auditable? Is it safe? Is it reliable? And then we look at the overall business, the HR side of things, premises. There's all sorts of different things you need to do, and you need to use a consultant to get them written down like this, so you understand exactly what you need. So I was overwhelmed when I thought, this is what we do without thinking about it, and it's what you all do without thinking about it. And it's good to see it written down. Go to the next slide, please. So then this is built into what the technical people call an IT stack, which is basically the front end, which to a layman is the interaction with the member or the interaction with the potential member. So in our case, it would be the website. It would be our invitation on our website to join us, to save, or to apply for a loan. On our website, we now have it's called a chatbot, which is the little cloud that appears at the bottom of most websites now, where you can actually talk to someone by typing in what you want to put. We also had our online service available to us from Wellington, because we use Wellington's brilliant services with Scion and CO Online Plus and everything. And then we've just introduced as well a community forum for members to give us their opinions or suggestions or tell us what to do, whatever they want to do, which is quite successful. I think it makes the members feel at home. But we had to have a front end in the technical speak. To us, that means the interface with the member. Processes, well, how do things happen? This talks about the different Paul was mentioning that different pieces of software are available to buy, and they can link in, so long as you've got a decent core system, core platform like we have with Wellington. You need to be able to integrate any other third-party software into that core platform, and we've got a number of things that do. There's an email marketing, there's a decision engine. We use e-signatures and direct debits. All of those link into our core platform. And then to record things, obviously we've got the data. We've got the Wellington core system, we've got the Wellington cloud, and we've also got our own technical team who are technical third party, if you like, who look after all our hardware and security and everything, and they secure our data for us, which is, again, it links in with exactly what Paul was saying. We need to make sure the data storage is what we need and is secure enough. And then the evaluation side of the IT is to do with management reporting. So obviously we use what Wellington provide for us. We've used Google Data Studio, which is available to everyone, and obviously we use Excel as well to build our reports. Next slide, please. So this is going back a year or so ago. This is the roadmap that we came up with, and we more or less followed to introduce our what we've got now, the digital strategy, which is working very well for us. We first of all decided to revamp our existing website, which went very well. It was launched towards the back end of last year. We introduced, as a member service, we introduced an income maximisation calculator on our website, which has been very successful, very popular. Basically, members can check that they've got the maximum income that they can possibly get, mostly for benefits, but working people can get benefits as well. And a lot of the time they don't realise that they can get benefits, or even they might be entitled to help with a new boiler or insulation. So even if they're working, and this tool on our website does that for them. We managed to automate emails. So once the loan decision is available, we have to get in touch with the member and let them know. We didn't want to be sitting on the phone all the time, so obviously we needed to automate emails, as well as automating the loan process and the online member onboarding process. And so in November, we integrated our emails into the decision engine. So the decision engine came up with the decision, or we put our amended decision into the decision engine, and then the email to the member was created automatically. And that email, if the decision was an accept, that email included a copy of the credit agreement for the member to sign and send back to us. And then in the beginning of this year, we introduced our community forum so members can talk to us. We're saying that our plan was in February, we were going to introduce kiosks in branches. It's basically a tablet on a stand that enables members who haven't got access to the internet to come into branch, and they can start using our using the tablet in the branch to apply for a loan or to apply to join if they want to. And our staff are there to help them if they want. If people have got access to the internet but can't use the internet properly, we can arrange for our members to come in, and the staff will use those kiosks to teach them how to do things for themselves. In April of this year, we introduced our the ability for members to pay by direct debit, which is, again, it's very popular because it's a lot easier for us to set up a direct debit for them than for them to set up a standing order. And obviously, if they get a higher loan at some point with a top up, then we can just amend the direct debits here rather than them having to do anything. And then we had we wanted to. This is sort of still in its infancy at the minute. We're not quite in line with our roadmap because of various things, not least the pandemic and so on. But we wanted to introduce some marketing, which we've eventually done. We wanted to bring in a marketing team, but in the end we decided to outsource our marketing to a marketing agency, and that was probably the best decision we made, because it's cost the same as a marketing person, but you've got a team of marketing experts instead, so that was good. And then in May, we're still waiting for July, we're integrating our decision engine with various things, not least our core system. Okay, next slide, please. So again, in line with what Paul was saying, this is what we've determined was our member journey. First of all, awareness of us. So a lot, most people I talk to don't really know what credit union is, let alone our specific credit union. And so one of our main thrusts in our marketing campaigns is to very much grow awareness of us and credit unions in general in our area. And we're doing that in a number of ways. So the first part of the member journey is being aware of us. The second is to stimulate their interest in joining us or applying for a loan with us. And then obviously we evaluate any application we get from them. We take action on it. We accept them. We accept them as a saver. We accept them as a loan applicant. And then we give them what they want. And the better we do, we hope they will tell their friends about us. And that advocacy then leads back to the initial awareness with other people. So we think that's quite a good synopsis of the experience that a member has with the credit union. Next slide, please. So by stage, you can see that the awareness, we look at has a member, has the person heard of the credit union? So you stimulate their interest. So they land on the website, they call into the branch, or they phone us, or they communicate with us however they can do that. And they show that interest, and they consider whether we're worth joining or not. So that it buys into our value as a business, as an ethical lender. But also they'll consider the interest rates we give, the interest rates we charge for loans, what we do, the dividend rates we give, the service that we give. And then they'll calculate whether that's good or bad for them. So hopefully we've succeeded with them at that, and then it turns into action, and they'll actually apply for the loan, and hopefully they get the loan, and off they go, or they get accepted as a saver. Once this slide, it shows the decision before supporting documents are uploaded or passed into branch. So that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes the documents will come before the decision. But whichever way, applicants, don't have to upload documents if they choose to use open banking, which we find is a revelation, because they can just link us to their bank, and we can get a quick view of the payment, income and expenditure. And also that within our decision engine, it shows how they're spending the money, in terms of what they're spending on bills, what they're spending on what we call wants, which is basically what you don't have to spend, it's discretionary spend, I suppose. And then what they're spending on loans and debt and savings and so on. And then eventually they'll be given a loan application, the loan decision, and be asked to sign the credit agreement. And we want everyone who can to sign online, because it frees up our staff to deal with other things rather than have to deal with members coming into the branch to sign for the form, although we will allow that. And then once their account's open and they're up and running, they've either got started the savings or they've got the loan on the go, or both. We'll then add them to our mailing lists if they give us their consent. And which then in turn enables us to communicate with them regularly, not necessarily to ask them to take out another loan or to do anything particularly, just to keep in contact with them. It might be an item of interest regarding our community development work we do. We have a community garden that our members use with a playground for the kids. There's a couple of local nurseries use that every day as it's quite a point of interest. And then obviously we've got a number of different channels now because of the digital strategy we've followed. We've introduced, as I said before, the chatbot. We've got obviously emails, phone calls, text messages, and we have a team who handle all those inquiries, again, to keep in touch with members. And then members who are really interested will join the online community and they will hopefully refer us. So then we go into the advocacy part of our member journey. Next slide, please. Then this is a similar slide. It's almost exactly the same slide, but this is looking at the IT systems that we use. So in terms of hearing about the credit union, we use email, Facebook, advertising, whatever it might be, and then they land at the on the website, or they look at the mobile phone, the mobile app that we use, or they'll just phone us, or they can communicate with us through the website. And then once they go through all the evaluation, once they've decided to apply, they apply through the website. It's just very simple, with a big button saying borrow, another big button saying save, and they click on one or the other, and then it takes them through. I think our member onboarding, I think something like 23 clicks, which is very favourable compared to the big banks. If you want to open an account with Monzo, for example, I think that's about 35 clicks, whereas we're 23. So that's obviously very good, because members, they don't want to spend a lot of time keying in onto their phone, or most of them will use the phone or the laptop. The supporting documents can be uploaded directly into the decision engine, which is accessed through the borrow button on the website, and they can also on that decision engine, they can allow us to use open banking, which all they do is sign into their bank. And we take a snapshot of the bank statement, and then the decision engine will sort that into the different categories of spending for us to make it easy for us to make a decision. And then we use a form of software to email the credit agreement to the member for them to sign, send back, and as soon as we receive it back, we post the money to their account. We use faster payments, which again Paul mentioned. For every transaction, we don't use any other type of payments, because we think our members would prefer to get the money straight away. So that's a service that we offer. And then the mailing lists, we use various software available for mailing lists, which we've passed to our marketing team, who use those to communicate regularly with members. Say, not always to try and sell them something or to try and get them to take out a loan or whatever, but it's just to keep their interest and keep them aware that we're here for them. And then obviously we've got the various other levels of or types of software that people use to communicate with us, whether it be email or the chatbot, text, the online forum, and any other type of things. That it's probably easier to show that by going through different names of this type of software available, but because there are a lot of different ones available, and I know Wellington provide most of them, if not all. I've taken those out, so it's just this is just to give you an idea of the different pieces of software that you can integrate with your system without having to spend an awful lot of money. And the next one, please. And this is the last slide. This is just basically, it's an example of what we can what a member will go through in dealing with us. So you've got someone there. She's a new member, so she's only just joined us. She wants £500. So our lead-in loan, our first loan to a member, is called an opportunity loan, and it's the highest interest one of the 3% a month, 42% APR one. And this is Jane, who's a carer, and she's got children. She owes on home credit and credit cards. She's separated. She gets £1,250 a month. Their credit score using TransUnion is 540. Different credit scores, very confusing with Experian and Equifax. So she's got some small defaults, and she's got an old CCJ. And we feel within our marketing strategy, we feel that for her, she won't get a bank loan, a decent bank loan, but we would be a lot cheaper for her than home credit, doorstep lenders and the like. So again, we go through this awareness, interest, evaluation, action and advocacy member journey, and you can see that she starts off, she needs to borrow small amounts quite often. And the household income doesn't allow her to meet unexpected expenses. So she's obviously having trouble managing on her budget. And it would be good for her to start saving again. That's her goal, if you like. She wants to get her finances in order. So she hears about the credit union from her neighbour, and she decides to apply. So she wants to pay a lump sum in as it shares, which we don't really like members to do. So we would encourage her to just apply for the loan without doing that. She uses the money advice service calculator. So that's again a service we offer on our website, and then she'll apply for the loan. And then she starts saving £5 a week as well as getting her loan. So that's just a typical journey that a member would go through. So we found that although we didn't intend to start out by introducing a digital strategy, we thought it would be a good thing for us to be able to help as many people as we could in our area. And we realized that the digital strategy was the only way we could do it. We found that the easiest thing for us was to work with a consultant, someone like Paul, who knows what's available in the marketplace. And that was by far and away the best thing we ever did. We also had great support from Wellington, which I would recommend as well. And we found that we've gone leaps and bounds. We've almost doubled our loan book from where we were 3 years ago. And we're intending to grow our membership by 5 times over the next 5 years. And we feel we'll do that with this marketing strategy and the digital strategy tied in together. So I'd recommend it to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Geoff. That's great. It's really good to see how your processes at the start, how so many, and how you nicely laid it out with the awareness stages and the technology needed for each of them. So thank you. We have hit 12 o'clock, so I see Emma has there was a couple of questions about the survey, which Emma's kindly answered in the chat, that it was carried out by independent research agencies Census-wide on behalf of us in April 2021. And I think just in the interest of time, we'll just leave it there. But thank you, Paul, for your presentation. Really, really informative. I know Therese said, excellent presentation, great information presented in an easy to understand way. So thank you for that. And thanks, Geoff. And thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, Rebecca.